Everybody, welcome to a special edition of Cocktails with Cav. I tell you what, we have an incredible show tonight. We're going to be talking about a big hot topic, of course, that's been spoken of all across social media. Big issue on X, of course, everyone talking about, and that's artificial intelligence, AI. But most specifically, we have an incredible panel tonight of great indie creators that we're going to discuss the impact of artificial intelligence on our crafts and hopefully glean some new information, because everybody needs to get ready. It's that the ship has sailed and we're on the Titanic. So let me take a brief moment to introduce this great panel we have of creators. First up, we have Tia Jeanne. She's, of course, a creative writer and master propagandist. She's a Chinaski winner, a Pushcart Prize nominee, and Pulitzer nominee. But she's also, for fiction in her playwriting, she's also the author of Ghosts on the Block Never Sleep, which, of course, was a banned book that now goes for about $1,000 a pop on eBay. There's no kidding about that. So get on eBay, get you a copy. It's worth it. Of course, we have A.B. Patterson, award-winning Australian writer who knows firsthand about corruption, power, crime, and sex. Some incredible crime fiction work he has. And he's been a detective sergeant in the WA Police, as well as a chief investigator with the NSW Independent Commission Against Corruption in Australia. And his newest work is the novelization of the cult classic, Jasper, The Gloves Are Off. Andrew, thanks so much for being with us, buddy, from Down Under.
Good morning.
Then we have Maurice King. He's been a professional DJ for over 30 years. He's a legend of the original Chicago house scene, Mo. Thanks for joining us. He's still DJing, but getting more into his other passion, voiceover work. And he's also an experienced audio editor and engineer for hire. And then last, but certainly not least, our friend Vern Smith, a Canadian writer who's Scratching the Flint was named the best indie novel of 2023 by Crime Fiction Lover. And he's also the author of the novels Under the Table and The Green Ghetto. Also a winner of the Chinaski Award as editor of the Jacked Crime Fiction Anthology. And Smith's a former newspaper reporter, magazine editor, radio host, union organizer, political staffer, and jack of all trades. Vern, thanks so much. And I'm, of course, your host, George Kavanaugh. Look, I really am honored to have been invited to moderate this panel on artificial intelligence. So thank you guys for having me, and thank y'all for being here. So, of course, please, this is a big hot topic. Like I said in the introduction, the ship has sailed, and I guess one of the first questions, look, ethically and technologically, how did we get here? And I'd like to start that off with Vern, because I know you do a lot of work with a plethora of authors across the spectrum there for Run Amok Books, and just how did we get where we're at with AI right now? It's moving so fast.
Well, I think you have to look at it from a historical perspective in terms of how we got here from there. And to me, there is in the 80s. I was living in my hometown, Windsor, Ontario, right across the river from Detroit. The local paper there, the Windsor Star, an editor took a photograph from a news conference, and in the photograph there was a close-up of a microphone, and had the call letters of a rival media service, likely another Windsor radio station, and sort of took a marker to it, blacked it out, published the picture. And there was actually a huge outcry over the altering of a news photograph. And the union got involved. There were articles in the paper, the Windsor Star, which ran it. Other media sort of played a watchdog role and reported upon it. As I said, the union was very involved, and watchdog media magazines from other parts of the country, Toronto in particular, weighed in on this. And, it was eventually resolved, and they obviously weren't going to do that anymore. And so from there, such a big deal that was, you fast forward more than a few decades, and to the first day where Donald Trump was supposed to be arrested. And I'm reading about it in my pre-caffeinated state, and from everything I can garner in the regular media, he hasn't been arrested yet. And so I went on social media and started looking, and there were these pictures of Trump being chased down by CIA, FBI type guys in suits, tackling him, ripping the arm off his jacket, and everything. And it took me a few moments, again, in my pre-caffeinated state, to realize that this was AI and it was a big joke. And it was funny. It was not without humor, and I could appreciate that. The problem is, I sort of looked left and looked right, and I'm saying to myself, okay, if they can do that to him, they can do that to anybody. And, and people are believing it. And so now, fast forward to just last week, I'm talking Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And there are AI attack ads against both Trump and Kamala Harris, where somebody has used AI to duplicate their voices and jam words into their mouth, and and things that they never said. And so, ethically, I would say shame on both of them. It's a dumpster fire, and as a writer, I say shame on both of them for using AI. Real writers, real editors, and real researchers could have done better, and certainly after looking at what the interests of both parties did, I would say, to them, people who are looking for a vote, they both need to do better in terms of AI.
Right, and it is moving so fast and blurring that lines between reality and, the fiction of videos created with artificial intelligence, including, like you said, the voices. What's the rest of the panel feel how fast that is moving? Because like Vern said, when you begin to discuss the ethics of it, the regulations are way behind the reality of what's
way behind,
exponentially rolling day by day, even week by week. So, definitely, please, Tia Janae, what do you think? T says we like to call it. All of Tia Janae's friends call her Tisa. So,
well, I would say when it comes to AI as an author, it's a scary, scary terrain right now, because it's not just, an AI editor from the big one. It's not just things going on where people are using it, the writers are using it allegedly or potentially to write their manuscripts or start their books or in their books. It's literally now the literary agents are getting in on the fun and games. I saw in my research for this panel, literary agent Mark Gottlieb, that's his website, literary agent markgottlieb.com, Gottlieb. He has an article called The Future of Publishing and How AI is Streaming. And he has this checklist where he says, number one, there's content generation and how AI-powered tools like natural language generation can create written content quickly and efficiently. And publishers can use AI to generate product descriptions, news articles, or reports, saving time and reducing costs. And then he goes to, 5 other points: editing and proofreading, content curation, predictive analytics, translation and localization, and metadata enhancement. So what now we see is that literary agents are signing people that they normally would never sign, that had no chance of getting a book deal prior to now, but now they can data mine from all of the desperate people. And now they can come and use them as a template to have more access to training the AI under all of the banter of cost metric, which means at some point in the next 6 years or less, we're going to get to a point where books will not be able to be sold unless they're created with AI.
I see the corporate mentality grabbing hold, like you said. I mean, when you begin to talk about profit and keeping costs down for production of the art, whether it be books, actual art, paint, pictures, it's incredible. When we talk about these things moving so rapidly, it's a global thing, of course. I mean, AB, please, how are things going in Australia with AI as you guys are dealing with it as well, just like Tisa was talking about?
Yeah, look, I think our experience is probably fairly similar to, I think the Western world is probably fairly similar in relation to what's going on. A couple of touch points we've already heard. I mean, in terms of the ethics and the technology, I don't think we can stop the technology moving forward. I don't think we've ever been able to stop any sort of technology moving forward. I think it's the ethics that is the issue. And we've seen other technologies, for instance, human cloning, genetic engineering, those sort of things, jump straight in with all these ethical rules and all the rest of it. But I don't think anybody's taken the time or even perhaps the care to think forward to how this will affect society on a broader level. Because, once we start, we already do, of course, we already have AI creating stuff. I mean, what do you believe these days? And as that starts to have more and more of an influence, that has a profound effect on society for all of us. You're seeing it obviously with, you've got a presidential election coming up this year. You're seeing obviously fake stuff already being done in relation to that. Where does it lead us? And what do we believe when we see it or we hear it? There's always been bullshit out there, of course there has. I think traditionally it's been easier to discern what was rubbish and what was fact.
Yes.
And I think that's the real issue now, and that's where the ethics has to try at least and catch up, and that's going to have to be driven by government at the end of the day. But I think in terms of what I'm seeing down here in Australia, there's certainly a lot of talk about AI, of course, and of course we're sort of more focused on what we're talking about today on the panel about generative AI, and there's lots of talk around wanting to protect authors' rights in terms of having their content taken by these companies to do the training, the AI systems and all the rest of it. Heaps of discussion around those sort of things and ways to try and safeguard yourselves as a creative before having your materials taken, although I think there doesn't seem to be any regulation that's anywhere near caught up with what's going on. But what I'm not seeing at all is any sort of push to say, well, hang on a minute, this at the end of the day is about authenticity. And where is the push for, we're all on the same page, I think, on that one as creatives. But where is the push to say, well, actually, we need to safeguard the authenticity of what's being created? Because at the end of the day, anything that we write or we create, it's about the human experience, and you can design a computer as smart as you think that the computer can be. It's never going to be a human experience. So, but to me, that's the key issue. It's about the authenticity of what we do, creative domain, and that's what's really at threat here.
Well, and I think it's obviously infiltrated all walks of life, not just the creative trades. You were talking corporate, accounting, you name it. Manufacturing. But when you speak specifically about the creation arts and like Mo and I, we're mostly in the same field when we talk about, like, say, audio narration and voiceover work. Of course, that's a huge thing that's going on now. And with the creation of, heck, you have things coming out like the Beatles coming out with a new album, with an AI.
There's only one Beatle alive.
Right. And it's, and even, it's an anecdotal story. I do, in addition to commercial audio narration, for novels, I do side projects of public domain works for myself. Just I enjoy doing it, and I release those. And I tell you, just as an example, I worked months on one an Ernest Hemingway work that was released, and 2 weeks after I finally completed this grandiose work that I'm uploading it, and there's already an AI version of Ernest Hemingway reading his own work, because they've trained the voice with Ernest Hemingway's from old interviews. And it's like, I probably can't compete with Ernest Hemingway reading his own work. But,
what do they do? The sun also rises? What?
that was the one, buddy.
I just guessed that.
But well, how do you feel about it, Bo? I mean, being that portion of the creative work we're talking about, since you and I are kind of in that voiceover range, how's it affecting you so far in that section of the industry?
Well, so far, my side of it, it hasn't really touched me on the voiceover side so far. Going on with me, because one thing about me, yes, I do voiceover and everything else, but I've also been a DJ for the past 40 years. I started out on 2 turntables, went from turntables to CDs, went from CDs to playing MP3s on the computers like everybody else. Now I have a piece that I don't need a computer. And what's bothering me is the fact that AI is trying to eliminate people like me. They figure it's just so much easier to just get a thing that plays what I want. And they already have that. And that's nice and fine and dandy, but as far as but my other big thing comes from something me and Tisa talk about all the time, is the creative side of things. We're getting to a point where we want to eliminate creativity. We want to eliminate people with a creative mind, and they want everything to be basically artificial and controlled.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely.
Sounds like 1984.
Yes.
Well, and that's a very interesting point too, and there's just so many ramifications, and again, obviously, I mean, I don't think we could say enough that it's moving so rapidly. One of the questions I would have to throw out to the panel, and I'd start with Tisa, because I think she's probably, out of all of us, probably the most intimate about it, is that those ramifications for artists when you talk about, and I believe Andrew had mentioned it a little, when you're talking about, okay, we need to compensate creatives, their work, of course, your intellectual property rights, things of that nature. And of course, we've already mentioned how regulations are nowhere near reality at the moment. What do you think about that, Tisa? I mean, as far as having been involved in scraps with, say, players in the market, how do you think AI is how is that gonna unfold, you think, maybe?
Well, here's my take on it. For one, AI reinforces censorship. And let's start from there. And the big players in the market, like Amazon and Barnes & Noble, who bought Ingram Spark, they can use AI very efficiently to flag your book for naughty words and concepts that are taken out of context.
Mm-hmm.
And once they flag you, because of how print-on-demand distribution goes now, and I mean, when we talk about print-on-demand, which we really don't as writers and publishers talk about print-on-demand right now is dominating how books are released in the Western world. And you have to go through one or the other. And you have too many people that are releasing books. Yes, I said it. There are too many people releasing books. Not saying everybody doesn't have a right to release a book, but when you have people just churning out books with the AI, constantly, 5 a second out in the hour, every hour. And then you have Amazon playing their little games, Thomas and Mercer, and their other imprints, like Mindy Kaling has an imprint on Amazon. For what? She's an actress. What is she releasing? She can use the AI to keep content coming. Plus, we have to compete with celebrities that get deals just because they're the talk of the town for 5 minutes. Then you have to compete with the old school writers. Then you have to compete with your peers. Then you have to compete with the AI. And then you start seeing a pattern that only certain books are being published. Only certain books are being promoted. Only certain books that deal with non-offensive things are allowed in the marketplace, which means when you release a book like I did or AB did, it winds up becoming heavily scrutinized. And then you have to defend it, not so much on the quality of the work, but on the content of the work. And it could be one thing, not the whole story, not anything that's offensive in the grand scheme of things. It's one tiny thing. And then now you got AI saying, you know what, we're not going to allow you all to have that conversation. I mean, this is trickling around almost to every genre in the fine arts, but we feel it more in literature because we are the written word. And AI is coming in, as AB said, there needs to be more government regulation and there needs to be ethics. Well, the government has no ethics. If they had ethics, we wouldn't be having this conversation.
You got that right.
Yeah.
Okay.
Massive point.
Which is going to
if they're doing that with the written word, just imagine what they'll do with music.
Well, if we go back in history, which Vern and Mo and probably AB are old enough to remember, there was this little thing called the PMRC, which was the beginning of censorship of musical works and songwriting. C. Dolores Tucker and Tipper Gore were at the forefront of that, and one of the biggest proponents against it was Frank Zappa, who, if you listen to Frank Zappa, wrote some of everything that was out the box crazy, offensive to a lot of people, ridiculous, but he felt that he had a right to do it, and he did. Like, one of his biggest songs that got thrown under the bus was Titties and Beer. Why does it hurt when I pee? Which is an autobiographical song. You had it in the 1990s. You had people like Tupac Shakur, talking about C. Dolores Tucker and How Do You Want It? We hide behind the children. We say it's the kids, and we have to protect their young minds from anything that could be completely obscene. But yet, you have a drag queen show at the Olympics. The government has no ethics. If they had ethics, then Kamala Harris wouldn't be the AI czar.
The AIs are that too.
AI of the United States.
Oh, wonderful. It'll go as well as the border, I guess. I don't know.
All right, that's handled.
If you look up, you can see that she couldn't even tell you what AI stood for, let alone what artificial intelligence was actually supposed to be about. So, again, if the government had ethics, we would not be having this conversation, because someone, at least the silent generation politician that's 98 years old and refuses to retire, would have then came out and said, this is not right. This isn't fair to up-and-coming artists. This isn't fair to established artists. I mean, essentially what Western governments have said with this, that are going along with it, is everybody who's made their money prior to 2020, they've made their money, and no one will make money after.
Yep.
Well, and that's that.
So no one's supposed to be creative after 2020. Is that what it is?
It's supposed to be censorship. It's supposed to be this very weird 1984 that is self-policed by who else? The artists.
And that's an interesting concept as we're talking through this subject tonight. Not only in the creation of work, as we talk about as being creatives and having a plethora of work just thrown out there by AI, writing 4 books a week and releasing them on Amazon, or getting them pumped out. But what Tisa was just talking about, on the censorship end, and I mean, I imagine that when you talk about that slippery slope of who gets to decide what's offensive, what's not offensive, and just like Mo spoke about, killing creativity in that way as well. It isn't so much that people can't continue to be creative, it's just their work will never see the light of day, and that's and if anybody
today though, see, that's the thing. I mean, okay, let's look at racism. Let's say it's a fictitious book. It doesn't even have to be nonfiction. Let's just say it's a satirical book about an alternative universe a la The Handmaid's Tale, where white people literally have like a university system that teaches white people how to kill niggers. Who is Amazon to tell them that they are stirring up hatred?
Well,
we cannot read satire anymore?
Well, I think it's like I said, that slippery slope though of what gets put out. And AB, you worked a lot, in government when you talk about ethics and and all of that.
This ought to be interesting.
I'll say first up, I do agree with Tisa. I'm not sure where the ethics is in government. Well, look, I think, and if I can just go back to the 1984 mention, but I think the real problem that we're facing here is that Big Brother's not coming from government. Big Brother's coming from big tech.
Yeah.
And government is not doing anything about that, because it all becomes this very cozy arrangement where they support each other. It's what my work. I always talk about the establishment, and I rail against it. But you get that arrangement between them, and unless there's some impetus for government to do something, they're not going to do anything. I mean, big tech will do whatever they want to make money, because that's all they're interested in. There is no ethics in big tech. And by and large, I would, as I said, agreeing with Tisa, I don't think there is by and large in government either. But I think the problem you've got is that you have big tech doing what it wants, and this censorship is starting to roll in. But there's no checks and balances on that. At least if government is the one regulating. I mean, in a democracy, and I know this is a little bit theoretical because democracy is not perfect, but at least in our electoral cycle, we get to change the government if we don't like it, in theory.
Right.
But if we don't get to change big tech, we have no, as the citizens, we have no control and no say in this. And so I agree. It is a form of censorship, absolutely, and it is all about controlling, what's said and what's put out there. And you look back in history, a lot of the great works of literature at one point have been banned by somebody somewhere, because those in positions of power don't want to hear alternative views. So it does come down to freedom of expression and censorship.
And I don't think definitely human beings can't keep up with technology as we fight it. And what do you feel? And I think maybe that's a big question to ask is, as creatives, because I see things online when we talk, like Mo and I, with voiceover work, popular websites where you can get work, things of that nature, commercial websites. But you see it now, you start to see it, and I don't know if Mo's noticed, there's a ton of for-hire work for voiceover artists to train AI models.
Okay.
And a lot of, to me personally...
And that's exactly what they're doing. They'll advertise for the job, and then while you're waiting on them to call you back for the job, they've already done the job with your voice without you.
Right. And so what do you think, and I'll toss this one to Vern, of, knowing that he works with a plethora of other artists, with anthologies and things similar to some of the things Andrew's doing with his, his police books, Cops That Write, which is a great project. But what do you think, Vern? I mean, as creators, where does that, while we're waiting for regulation to take hold and possibly some ethics to arrive at some level, which I
Good
doubt.
luck on the ethics.
Exactly. Very, very unlikely. But what do you think as creators we should be doing when it comes to AI and helping foster it? Because obviously they're using our work, our voice work, our written work to train these models, and so what do you think?
Well, from the perspective of the written word, which is primarily what I'm dealing with right now, I don't want to say there's a silver lining, but there is an opportunity in all this, and essentially all the big operations that are using this are making it easier for us to beat them on the page. If you're a writer and you're generating content that way, we're going to be better. Our writers are going to be better. Our books are going to be better. And, maybe we're not on the New York Times bestseller list, but simply by having better standards and actually doing the work ourselves, we're going to be better. And, part of my thing at Run Amok Books and Run Amok Crime is I'm the at-large editor, which basically makes me a glorified manuscript scout. And I have seen a number of articles indicating that some of the larger publishers are either gearing up or are already selecting manuscripts with AI programs. And if you're selecting manuscripts with AI, we're going to beat you every time. Our ethics are going to be better, our standards are going to be better, and on the page, we are going to kick your ass.
And do you think, though, at some point as technology exponentially improves, though, that, I mean, as far as the customer is concerned in creative arts, I think the impetus is on a lot of them, too, to make a stand.
Well, you know what? And I think I think we don't give readers enough credit. I did a reading in Windsor last August, and we talked about a lot of this stuff. And it was the type of thing. My reading went very well, but in the Q&A, I had people eating out of my hands because people have had enough of this dookie. Okay, and they want unsanitized work. And they want the real thing. They want something that's going to kick them in the gut. And I do believe that only a human writer and human publishers can provide that. And they see through all this. And just to double back on what Teaser was talking about, I was trying to get in there. Part of what's going on, books, movies, music. Okay, they are trying to create, and they have to some extent, and they've been successful in creating government approved or party approved culture. And they don't hide the medicine. It's obvious what they're trying to hammer home, and people see through that, and they're tuning out. And that's how I know that the stuff that we're putting out on a human level is better and is connecting better, and that we're beating them on the page. It's once you compromise yourself, you're probably going to compromise yourself again and again and again. And you
won't have a choice but to do it that way, because that's the way that they're going to accept.
There's always a way to get around that. Whether you'll be commercially successful or not is another story. But worst case scenario, I'll go back to Xerox and Staples, and I'm not afraid to do that. And I've done it before, and I had a lot of fun with it. And I'm really proud of the chat books that I created with some of my friends in the 90s. And I'm happy to do that again. There's always a way to beat them. There's always a way to be better than them. Will the world know about you? Maybe not. And if you're looking for fame and you're looking for fortune, there's nothing wrong with those things. But that's the cost. But I know the way we're doing things with high ethics, and high standards, and real people, and we are going to beat you. We're going to beat you on the page.
Well, I
Something
think
I got to agree with you guys on is about standards. And if we don't establish some standards, then we're going to fall down. We're going to fall down that rabbit hole anyway. But you have to have standards in order to do this properly.
And that is the point. Well, I think is an excellent point. I believe people need to start having that discussion in earnest, a little more than they're doing, because it's flowing along without any ramifications at the moment. And people talk about artificial intelligence, and of course, it's going across the rest of the labor markets as well. So they better start having that discussion sooner rather than later, I think.
I think it's
very much so. I always told people and something changed in the DJ world from back in the day, because I came from the days of spinning on turntables and a mixer, and I went from turntables to CD players to playing on a computer with MP3s and burning my CDs and all this, and then now to a point where I don't need a computer to do it. But the whole point of the matter of it is the quality level still had to stay the same, no matter what happened. In other words, what I used to tell people all the time whenever something new came out in the DJ world, I always told them, technology is my bitch. I'm not technology's bitch. When they come up with something, the question is, does it work for me? Or do I work for it? It does. If it doesn't work for me, it sits on the sidelines.
I think that's the fear with AI, is that we may end up working for it. and
it's hard to have.
If we let it go that way, you're right. We are going to end up working for them.
Wait, I want to make a point about standards. It's very hard to have standards. Okay, let's call the literary industry out for what it is. Okay, it is like 98% white, and this is just the United States. I don't know the percentages in the other countries, but in the United States it's 98% white, and it's overwhelmingly male. And even if they publish women, it's normally a man that's publishing them, outside of the literary agency pool, which is 96% white women. Okay, how can we have standards when we can't even get over the racism? Because the racism is real. It's in some pockets, depending on what state you're in, it could be very subtle, or it could be in your face. It could be very blatant. It can be as simple as no DEI, no EEOC. So if we can't even figure out how we're going to get past that, and the racism works both ways too, because I have a lot of white male author friends, of course, and they can't say nigger. They can't write a book and say nigger in the book. They can't have a character say nigger or anything that's offensive. Okay, but I can, because I'm black, so I'm allowed, right? But they're not allowed. Look at that kind of racism or bigotry, whatever you want to call it. So how can we have standards if we're picking and choosing the winners and losers based on whatever the virtue signal is of the day? And now you have
the standard. The standards.
The standard.
You wanted an answer.
The standard.
You wanted an answer.
Let's hear it.
Yeah. Well, and the point you just made, Tisa, is, to carry on further from what you were saying, the picking winners and losers. Whether you're discussing race or genre of literature, or the methodology of what they're choosing to make the narrative, the narrative of the day, like you said, virtue signal, whatever it may be. Do you find that that's going, I think in my own mind that's going to be a bigger issue with AI, is the who chooses the winners and losers as far as proliferating the work throughout society and culture. You know, in other words, and I'm talking, that's surely, in my mind, it's surely going to be driven by profit and motivation. And, you know, why sign a contract with authors and voiceover artists, you know, when you could pump work out all day, you know, and then tell people, and I know there was the recent discussion about some of the bestseller lists being not so based on how many books sell, but you know, they taper the list to what works they're pushing now. So what's to say that in the future that's going to be the problem when you talk about, you know, picking winners and losers?
Well, they're picking winners and losers with AI by picking the content that they want the general public to have access to or not have access to. And what they've done is AI hit fine arts first. Okay, it started with the graphic artists, then it went to the musicians and the DJs, and then it hit us, and now it's in theater and film. And what they're doing is, let's look at AI like this. AI is the sum of all things automation. Before we got to AI, we had automation. We all have participated in automation, whether or not we acknowledge it. If you've written anything on Microsoft Word and used their autocorrect, you have participated in automation.
If you've gone to an ATM.
If you went to an ATM, if you've used a credit card, you've participated in automation. Now, automation is supposed to make our lives easier. But every time you participate in the self-checkout line, you got rid of somebody's job.
Yeah.
And nobody wants to look at it for what it is. And unfortunately, with automation, we've allowed people like Amazon to come in and dominate, especially in the literary landscape. And because we've allowed this to happen for 20 years, now we're 6 months into AI and we can't keep up. Because the AI is writing itself every day. I mean, it's not day by day, it's really hour by hour. And so now what we have is like I'll use my book. Amazon used automation to scan my book and say, oh, I spelt words that were considered to be offensive correctly, and I didn't use racial epithets, and so they had a problem with it, and they shadow banned my book. Okay, AI would just scan that book and just sanitize it and re-release it as an AI author. And so now this is the sum of all things automation. Now you can't sue them because they made a facsimile of your book, and AI is public domain until, you know, Universal and Sony and the rest of the corporatocracy decide to pay some politicians and bribe them to change the law so that they can copyright it. Okay, so what we're dealing with here is we've all been bitch slapped by automation. The only thing that can save us really is by being offensive. Because if you try to do anything dirty with the AI, it will literally block you. It will shut you out. It will not allow you to pass go, collect $200, and generate whatever you want it to generate. And that's off of the whole scandal with Microsoft's search engine, their AI, you know, being racist. Okay, you all can Google that. They had a whole big scandal about, you know, their search engine was racist and allowing, you know, all types of offensive material to come through with, you know, a search. So what we're dealing with now is, you know, white authors, and I'm talking to y'all, especially the indie white authors. You all need to start telling people to kiss your white ass. That's kiss your white ass, and I say it with an attitude because that is anti-AI. If you can do that, let them come for you. Let them say you're racist and sexist and all these ists and isms and prejudices. Let them do it. Okay.
I mean,
the reality is, I would prefer if the white authors acted like they did in the 70s, where they had zero fucks given. You know, they're gonna write that Sandbook story. Okay, they're gonna write the Windward Passion. And I mean, you had one dude, I mean, Cal Oslott, he wrote how many Mandingo books? And what is that about? That's Jungle Fever X-rated version. That's all those books were. Big black books running around fucking white women on the side, getting killed for it, and then the next generation continues the whole path. Okay, so we need more dirty books. We need more.
Amen.
That's how you be.
Notice what she said. Dirty books, not filth. There's a difference.
Right. We're not saying, write things that are going to make your mother regurgitate if she, opened it up and think you're sick or something. No, we're saying write, like Street of Hoes by Leo Gold. Write those Donald Goines, old school, nasty, dirty, uncompromised books. I don't care if you're white. I don't care if you want to write a black character or a Latino. I don't care if you even want to do it stereotypically. Just be creative and true to the character. And that's how you tell AI, fuck you. There's no other way to do it. And if the authors in general don't want to do that, then we're going to have a problem. I mean, romance just got their nuts kicked. The romance community just really took a hit. Okay? And they write like all of the most like real cheesy Lady Chatterley white romance stuff you could possibly imagine. If romance can't make it, nobody can make it, right? Because they've been like 90 years, right? So we need, especially in crime fiction and in the other niche genres like sci-fi just got their ass kicked as well. They had AI scandals, they had awards scandals about censorship and all types of stuff. We need to open the door. It's not about so much inclusion, because we've included everybody. Okay, it doesn't matter who you are. If you want to write, you can write in the language that you're comfortable with. What we need to do is we need to open the berth up for dirtiness. Think about when you're a kid, okay? When you're a kid and you're hanging out with your friends, especially you guys, you all the guys, okay? Fart jokes are like tantamount, okay? I don't know what it is about human beings. They like to hear fart jokes. They like to, when somebody farts out of the blue, people laugh and giggle. Okay, that's considered to be poor manners, right? But yet and still, little boys figure out how to make fart sounds with their armpits. And they grow up to be dirty old men, right? That's the human experience. AI can emulate emulate that unless somebody literally allows themselves to be data mined for like 6 months with every possible nasty Archie Bunker tendency being filtered into this thing so they can make adjustments. And thankfully, the government is not invested in that part of it yet. So there's an opportunity here for all of the writers and the voice artists and the other parts of the fine arts that we can get together and fight it as a collective. I mean, we don't really have a union, and I'll let Vern talk about that. We don't have a union, but we do have a collective of people who write controversially and raunchy. Okay, so if we continue to do that, to break the status quo, that's going to do 3 things. 1, that's going to make the literary agency pool have to rethink their life ambitions. 2, that's going to make Penguin Random and Schuster have to make some hard decisions, especially since they're investing billions of dollars into replacing every facet of employee that makes these books happen. And 3, that's going to free the writers. And that's going to allow the readership to pick and choose if they want to read something that is going to be equal to what they're going to find on the streaming when they start AI streaming stuff, or if they want to read something visceral and real that is more related to how they feel with what's going on in life. So choices have to be made. If they're not going to be made, if everybody's going to be keyboard warriors, if we're just going to do podcasts and just talk about it and not fix it, then it's already over. We lost the battle.
Yep. Yeah.
So I'm like a revolutionary by myself, writing all types of damning things that nobody really will buy because somebody told them not to buy it.
I'm glad I got a copy of Ghosts on the Block before it got pulled. And I'm not selling it. I don't care how much they're offering on eBay. It's mine, and I'm keeping it. Because I loved it.
Well, go ahead.
Sorry, man. I was going to say. I mean, I think, and I think TCU makes some really good points there, and I think what we're heading even more towards is almost an underground culture again.
Yes.
Where, but those of us who are prepared to write what we want to write, no matter what it is, are prepared to do that. I mean, look, one of the reasons that I always, until the novelisation, which was released recently by Uncle B, I've always self-published, and I've never approached a literary agent or a publishing house or anything because, and particularly in the market down here where it's really dominated by the main 4 publishing houses. There's very little way of any small independent ones. I know damn well that my stuff would never ever see the light of day if it was left to the publishing industry, and that's leaving aside any discussion around AI, because the human censors, stroke editors, they'd take one look at it and say, oh no, that's. I remember going to one of the major book chains in Sydney, and with my first novel, and the manager did at least take a copy to have a look at it, and when I went back in, she said, "Oh no, our readers would not be interested in that stuff." Well, who the hell are you to decide that? So I think what's happening is that movement to silence voices and on a number of levels, which we've already discussed. That's been there for a while anyway. AI is simply going to, and to take your automation point, TC, it's simply going to mechanize this whole process and make it horribly more efficient in terms of silencing people. So I think it's back to that underground culture, and we need to come up with ways to make that culture thrive, and to get word out there about the genuine books that are still being produced by genuine authors.
I want to add to that just a little bit. If you guys been paying attention to AI and music, with the streaming sites and everything like that, I'm waiting to see if Penguin Random and Schuster are going to come together and have an AI streaming for literature, because we really don't have literary streaming. We have ebooks, which have always been like a struggle to find a foothold in the market, because you have too many traditionalists and purists that want a physical book. But then you have Amazon leading this path of they don't want paper books. So it's really ironic that the person that has all of the printing machines is the person that doesn't want to print books. What's going to happen when we get to a point where they figure out a platform for literature where somebody can just put in there like Mad Libs? They want to have a book that's about some woman with a bad husband that's on the run with some kids because she was battered and she finds Jesus. And then they can print it right there in seconds, like what they're doing for music in the fall. Universal's going to unleash the beginnings of their AI. They're in the middle of a lawsuit with Udio and Suno right now, because Udio and Suno are doing what they want to do, except Universal has all of the masters for all of those artists that Udio and Suno have been data mining, right? So what's going to happen to literature when they can offer for $5 or $10 a month, like 100,000 AI books?
Well, they're going to crowd out the real thing. And that's, that to me, just you speaking about automation earlier, and AI is just an extension of that. The idea has always been to get rid of jobs. And if I could just pick up on the union bit that you mentioned, I was a union organizer, I was a union steward. One of the things the union taught me is when you vote, to vote with your job in mind. And I have not seen, I'm not saying that such a, unicorn doesn't exist, but I have not seen, we're in an election year here in the States, and I have not seen one American writer of any sort, or one American writers organization or union or whatever, approach a politician and challenge them on their stand with AI. It's every once in a while somebody makes a bold declarative statement in terms of we got to get together and fight this thing. And I want to be optimistic, but the reality is that the horse has left the barn. And for 25 years, I've watched writers go after writers over who's going to write about what, who's going to write about where, who's going to write about how, who's going to write about why, having fights over Willy Wonka, having fights over James Bond and Dr. Seuss and whatever you want to throw out there. And they've been too busy with these things to pay attention to the more mundane matters, such as insurance, copyright, ancillary rights, and AI. And by and large, writers are not unified to mount a fight. They're not unified enough to mount a fight right now. And that is one of the problems, and that is another way in terms of how we got here from there. And certainly it's something to think about. I'm voting here for the first time in my life, and I'll be talking to the people who expect me to vote for them here, and I'll be talking to them about AI along with some other things. And I'm going to say, this is you've got people with their grabby little hands in my rice and beans here, and as somebody who wants my vote, what are you going to do about it? And I'm not saying that I'm going to be successful. I'm not saying that I won't be lied to and led astray, but I'm going to ask that question of all the people who are relevant in terms of, having jurisdiction to be able to do something about this. And I would invite my fellow writers and editors and publishers to do the same. I've seen some bold declarative statements in terms of people endorsing politicians. And I would ask all those people, before you do that, could you at least try to make a cursory phone call and extract a promise from these people who are asking for your votes before you?
It's a great thing to endorse them, but if you're not going to have a reason why you're endorsing them, it means absolutely nothing.
Agreed. And that's what I'm saying.
Well, what about the conferences? I mean, all of the literary conferences that are happening year after year, they're not holding anyone to account for AI. And a lot of conferences now are allowing AI to be used on submitted books.
If I could just jump in there, I'm Canadian living in the States, and the Canadian Crime Writers Association, for at least the last year, I believe it's just the last year, when you send in your book or story for the Canadian Crime Writing Awards of Excellence, if I'm getting that correct, you have to check a box saying that your entry, affirming that your entry is no more than 2% generated by AI. So they're in. AI's into the awards in Canada, the Crime Writer Awards. And, and I read that. And specifically, they're talking about generating content. No more than 2% of the content can be generated by AI. And I don't know why they put that in there, because it should be 0%. But, the talk about slippery slopes is, the way I'm looking at things now, and the way I'm looking at that specifically is, okay, it's 2% in last year. It's going to be 3 or 4% next year. It's going to be 5 or 6%. We're off to the races, So I mean, the horse has left the barn, and there are, when a writers association accepts that, it's a discouraging word. I don't want to go so far as to say, why do you exist? But I'm sort of saying, why do you exist if you're allowing this in? Again, you're allowing people to get their grabby little hands on my rice and beans, and I'm going to say something about it.
Yeah, and I think, in terms of the genuine independent writing movement, I think we've got to make that stand. It's 0%, and that's it.
That's right.
There's no percentage that will ever be acceptable.
I have.
Again, goes back to something I said before. If you guys are going to set this as the standard, this has to be set as the standard. If you're going to call yourself a creator, then you need to create. You don't need. We don't need you having 2% of whatever it is artificially created. What, you couldn't come up with that idea yourself? That's not helping you any.
I mean, well, you got publishing entities that are using AI to generate book covers. You got publishing entities using AI to edit books. You have publishing entities like Neil Clark with Clarkesworld that says, he got hit with, a whole, I think 20 or 30,000 AI stories that just flooded him. He shut down all submissions, and then when he opened back up, he said, I got anti-AI software to filter now stories to see whether or not it was made with AI. But it's like you're using AI to try to catch AI stories. You're still participating in the problem. And I get it. Publishers have a cross to bear right now because they have to figure out how to discern what's real and what's not. And that's becoming harder and harder across all the fine arts as the day goes on. But at the same time, Marlowe, everybody look up Marlowe, Marlowe. This is a self-editing tool, okay? It's on authors.ai. Marlowe is an artificial intelligence that helps authors improve their novels and long-form fiction by comparing their work to a database of manuscripts.
Oh, that's what you want. Yeah.
Okay. Now this is just for the general public right here, okay? Like, you get a couple of free credits and then you pay something like $20 and then you can, submit it and let your work be a part of thousands of other works so you can add to the process. Now let's say we're Penguin Random and Schuster and we got all the money in the world. Well, you don't need Marlowe. You can go hire some people, maybe the people who made Marlowe, to come and make you something private. Now we don't have any transparency.
We don't have that.
How are we going to force conferences not to take AI work when the industry standard now is adapting to AI?
Well, you don't patronize them for starters, and I certainly don't patronize anybody that's in this business. One of the points I do want to make is that it's obviously AI has a reach far beyond the things that we do. Certainly, all five of us, as I keep saying, you have AI with its hands on our rice and beans. I made some notes today before we got on the air, and of the different types of writing that I've done for money. And I've written newspaper and magazine articles, editorials, the odd op-ed, and the odd or essay. I've written speeches, press releases, strategic plans, contentious issue reports, radio scripts, public service announcements, and advertisements. I've done copywriting, and I've written fiction that's been pigeonholed 10 to 20 different ways. All of it involves money, and so it's all work. And if you're doing any of that work avec AI, you're kind of, I'm going to kind of sort of look at you as a scabby scab, because you're taking my work, or you're taking somebody else's work, somebody who has learned a skill, somebody who's honed a skill, and you've gotten a computer program that lets you do it, not as well, but well enough to get by. And so the way I look at it, if you're doing any of those things, and I haven't, I'm sure there's a dozen different types of writing for money that I've left out there. But if you're doing any of those things, you're kind of a scabby scab, and that's the way I'm sort of looking at it. I have a little bit of an advantage here because I'm of my age and I'm sort of approaching the end of the line, and you know, I can say, you know, I'm never going to open the program, and I'm so stupid I don't even know that it's a cloud, and so that guarantees I'll never get into it. But you know, I feel like I've done my body of work with a sense of honor and integrity, and I'm going to ride it out till the end that way. But if you're doing these things with AI, you're not for real, and you're certainly not as good. You need a crutch, and if you're taking other people's work with this stuff, sorry, you are a bit of a scabby scab.
I would use the term fraud personally, but you know, I think it is coming back to my point earlier about authenticity, and if I can just make one observation that's been distilling as we've been talking. There's actually potentially a sort of irony here to this whole thing, because the likes of us, and I mean, and both of you fellow creatives in the written word, I've read both of your work as well. AI will never, ever emulate what we write. For a start, it'll never be allowed to emulate what we write. but it won't, because AI will not be able to produce that genuine kick you in the balls, you know, bend you over and take you from behind human experience. And excuse the cameo of one of the scenes out of your book there, Tisa. Great scene. So I think the irony here, of course, is that it's those, and particularly those independent authors, who rail against us because they want to have that puritanical voice and control. I think the irony is that actually AI will take them out well before it ever touches us in terms of actual producing work, because AI will be able to emulate what they write, because what they write is completely vanilla.
Well, right now they're working on AI for porn, and so probably
Oh my God!
Once they get that together, then we might see a change in the attitude about dirtiness, and they might just say we're pornographers and throw us over there.
Yeah, because all the pictures my wife keeps getting with me and other women, they're AI generated. I don't know.
They just look real.
That's
a thing too.
In all seriousness, I guess HarperCollins is going to be a scabby scab, because I mean, they just partnered in April with 11 Labs, and I just looked up this thing on Google real quick. It says HarperCollins and 11 Labs AI to create audiobooks that are designed for publishers and independent authors to create an audiobook in 1 hour. Independent authors. So to me, it's like the industry has made its decision. You know, we are the enemy. We are the people who are the chosen that sit around and create these really fantastic stories, and or can pull people's nonfiction memoirs out without a hitch. But, and we really didn't talk about this because we've been mostly in the AI vein, but even in the industry, if you take AI out, once you have a hit book in one genre, you are not allowed to go to another genre. You are literally tied to that one thing and that one moment in time that people liked. And that cripples a writer. Writers should be free to write whatever they want, whether they want to write romance or sci-fi or horror. Every book should be different. But because of how the industry has it set up, where you have to be so pigeonholed in this one genre. And I mean, this is true for all of the fine arts, not just the literary community, but, you know, we feel it the hardest because, you know, once you write that great epic crime novel, the quintessential American crime novel, you never can get out of that box. And you spend the rest of your career, if you're on Penguin Random and Schuster, writing that same book with different characters over and over and over.
And I think you're right. You said that the industry, that gatekeeper role, as you mentioned, and it's and you're right, they made their decision because, well, you mentioned the audiobooks with 11 Labs, which I had read when you mentioned it. It reminded me, but ACX, which controls the overwhelming majority of the audiobook market with Audible, and they launched their baby in December for the same thing.
I mean,
to
don't
create
forget,
audiobooks.
Meta had came out publicly and said they were going to buy Simon and Schuster so they could feed their AI. What is Meta doing buying a publishing company, the biggest publishing company in the world, to feed their AI for Facebook and Instagram and Threads?
And
So-
It's called control.
Yep.
Well, again, you know, the industry has always had its rules and the independents have had their rules. And what's happened in the last 10 years is that the independents and the industry have clashed. And it's been explosive how it's crashed, because now you have literary agents that maybe they're not really literary agents, or maybe they're like trust fund babies that decided that, you know, oh, I like that rom-com, so I'm going to be a literary agent. And we don't have people like Toni Morrison editing books at Random House anymore, standing up for like Angela Davis, who wanted to write some radical revolutionary book. We don't have people that like books in this business. I mean, because you got to like to read if you're going to be in this business. It's not just, you know, making a whole bunch of money and writing. You have to love to read, because reading is what gets you into the business in the first place. And now we have AI in a time where we're not teaching kids how to write their name, so they're not going to know how to read. They're push button babies. And now we're going to tell them, just press a button, play Mad Libs, and you can get whatever you want generated, however many pages you want, whatever genre you want. I mean, we're even doing porn. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, when I saw porn AI, I was like, man, there is nothing sacred. Can you imagine?
Of course not.
Seriously, this is an AI conversation now. Y'all old, okay? Y'all old. Well, maybe not George, but everybody else is old. And,
I appreciate it.
yeah, like George is like 22. You know, he just became legal. Everybody else is like up in some age. But I mean, think about the classic era of porn. Like, all those people are dead. You know, like John Holmes, Juliet Anderson, Kay Parker just passed away this year. Now imagine if there's another Johnny Watt porn film that comes out now. Imagine
That's
that.
right. AI porn live on your streaming device.
That's what the world needs. What I do want to say is that, you know, there are people buying into the culture of you know, government approved culture, party approved culture, and you know, those folks get mad at all y'all because they've tied a hand behind their back, and no writer's good enough to do that. And the reality is they have tied a hand behind their back, and they want you to be like them. And when you're running wild and you're not self-censoring and you're doing what you want to do, you're obviously going to beat any writer who's got a hand tied behind their back, and who's ever buying into all this has obviously done so. And we see example after example, and certainly that is what is being portrayed. So what you're doing is obviously better than what they're doing.
I mean, maybe they're afraid.
They are afraid and they're resentful.
That's exactly what it is. They're scared.
Yeah.
I mean, let's just be real. Not everybody can write a great, captivating story where, you know, the dead body has cum in the hair.
No.
That's
That is for sure. And you know, they've obviously never read John Rechy, because if anybody read Rushes and you know, got to the bathtub scene at the end, their little pink eyes would just dissolve.
Or even Donald Goines. I mean, I hope that Donald Goines is raunchy enough not to be subjected to AI data mining, because it would hurt my feelings if I saw Dope Fiend Part 2. Dope Fiend is one of the hardest books I have ever read in my life, and literally scared me at 15 never ever to do heroin. You can't even get me with a fentanyl drip in a hospital off of that book.
AI could not do a sequel to Dope Fiend.
I mean, we would hope it wouldn't do a sequel to Dope Fiend, but I I mean, if you think about
Don't put it against them. They'll probably manufacture something on that level.
It wouldn't carry. It wouldn't carry. They could try. They could try, and you know they're certainly not above it. But there's no way. There's no way you could do anything that would be as powerful as that with AI and as dirty as that, as we've been talking about. You know, AI is there to weed out dope fiend. It's not there to make another one.
Well, yes, and you know the problem with a book like Dope Fiend is that it's revolutionary, and
Yes,
AI does not produce anything revolutionary. AI produces mundane.
Exactly. And if you want to create great art, you need to be out of step. And Jack Kerouac would have told you that. Bukowski told you that. And you know, if you are in step with a bunch of other people, then you're just creating more or less the same.
All of the greats would have told you that in the general.
Yes. You need to
The
be
Hemingways, could you
But he-
imagine Hemingway now?
Hemingway's in the AI.
Hemingway wouldn't be.
Hemingway
Bitching their ass out.
you wouldn't think much of it.
it's clean enough to go into the AI. See, that's the thing. You have to put a couple of fucks in there and something offensive. You know, like cunt. That's a good word to throw in a manuscript to make the AI break.
Shit, would Harper Lee use it?
No, because that was, you know, the very sanitized, censored era. You know, you have to be a good demure white lady with your hands folded with the gloves. So no, Harper Lee wouldn't have used it. Now,
You catching my point here with this.
Yeah, Jackie Collins would do it.
Well, I think I think that is a great way to look at how to defeat something that seems inevitable when you talk about obviously being cutting edge, like Vern mentioned, or you know, above outside the pale, like Tisa was talking about. Is, you know, AI is trained on the data sets, obviously.
Exactly.
And to me, it would seem, you know, all great creators throughout history have been those that have gone beyond the pale to break new concepts, break new genres, break new stories. And I'm not sure AI, not that I'm a technological genius, but you know, if the AI is trained on data, it crosses the wires to come up with something new and outside of that data set, something outside the box.
Something in technology that has always been around and it's stayed for the longest and it's still there. The old word gigo. You are aware of that word, right?
No.
You're gonna have to elucidate now. I don't know.
Gigo, Gigo. Garbage in, garbage out.
Yeah, you're exactly right, and that is. I'll just be very quick with this. I mean, that is what, you know, my take on AI is about. It's about sameness. It's about creating the same thing over and over again. It's about drawing from something else that's already been created and giving you something that's sort of kind of like that, but has not a whole lot of soul.
Well, what will the independents do? Will they use this as a rally cry to go more underground? Because
The good one.
what is it? Every 50 years, the counterculture becomes the modern culture.
Yeah.
About every 50 years. So the hippies were the last counterculture, and here we are trying to be a new counterculture that says, look, we want to be able to say what we want to say. Is it freedom of speech or not? Do we have a First Amendment right? Because there's this tag about freedom of speech, not freedom of reach.
There's also freedom of speech does not mean speech without consequences, which
Right.
is the biggest oxymoron I've ever heard. That's the whole idea of free speech, is there's not supposed to be consequences.
Your rights of free speech end at your nose.
Well,
Yep.
AI
Pretty
makes
much.
it freedom of speech, not freedom of reach. Because what AI will do in the next 6 years, it'll say, if you have a history, whether you write short stories or op-eds or what, if you have a history of churning out content that is controversial and offensive, you will be excluded, not boxed out.
But who writes? But wait a second. Who writes that? Who writes that standard?
The industry.
That's the question, isn't it? That's the big question.
Who writes that standard? Oh, the industry.
It's the
Wow.
industry.
Sounds like to me you need to change the things in the industry.
The industry.
What
Fine.
you can change is you can have your own standards in house, and you can have your own standards for yourself. What they've done
That's exactly right.
is they've gotten rid of the old standards, and for whatever reason, and I'm sure there's some very PC explanation behind this, but they've thrown the standards out. They haven't moved from the standards and adopted something updated. They've just gotten rid of the standards, and so you have to have somebody around who's Joe Strummer said something about old men and street punks together make a great team, and that is the truism, because you need somebody who knows what it's supposed to be like and was around long enough that they can remember a day when there were standards, when there were ethics. And, we're now into a place where there are basically none. And so what you can do is you can have your own house, you can have your own operations as your own individual person. And, you can be better than that ethically, and you can be better than that in terms of qualia. And, what the masses are doing and what the big publishers are doing in New York or wherever else, they're going to do what they're going to do. And you have to be confident and believe enough in yourself that you can say, okay, we're going to be better than that, we're going to beat them on the page, and we're going to kick their ass. And that's what you can do.
Well, again, the industry. Let's talk about the industry. Okay, the literary industry. Penguin Random and Schuster are signing authors not because they believe in their work. They're signing them because they want the multimedia rights to go and sell it to Amazon, Hulu, and Netflix to make properties that they can get residual income on.
And they're buying things up cheap.
Right. That's why they're signing so many authors, because HarperCollins bitches like a bad period every month about how much money they are not making. It's like they got cramps and the pads are not holding, and they have to just come out and tell you, okay, this month we didn't make this and we didn't make that. And then you ask yourself, well, what are you all over there publishing? And if you look at an industry book with all of their subsidiaries, they all got the same kind of a cover. It's that real sterile church kind of a cover, like you see. Sameness. Okay, I just call it the Jesus cover. Okay, and when you look at the even down to the lettering, ever since Gone Girl came out, every crime book has to be Gone Girl. Ever since that book came out, they have not tried to deviate from that, because it's first world white women problems, and they think there's a market for that that's going to sell it. Some crazy white bitch is married to some really good guy, and she hates him because he's pressing upon her nerves as a wife, and she wants to be free to go fuck some like little idiot, and so she fakes her death and blames him for it, and then you are like in this spiral of rich people problems, right? So you're not getting like a balance to that. I'm not saying Gone Girl is a bad book. I've never read it. I've seen the movie, and that was terrible. But what I'm saying is, for every one rich white woman problem, we need a James Baldwin fiction book. We need, like, If Beale Street Could Talk. We have to have a balance, which is what traditionally the industry understood, so we could have something for everyone, and not just this, what's that focus group? Our focus group told us we have to make this book, and if we don't make this book, nobody's gonna buy it because the data says this, and this. So even
who's this nobody human being you keep speaking of?
The nobody, the people are not going to buy the book because their data says
why? Because they're told not to buy it, or why, or because the book is that bad?
Neither. The focus groups go out and poll people, and then they find out based on people's personal likes with a series of silly questions.
In other words, they're sheep.
Right. Whether or not they're going to participate in this book. Now, traditionally, books were shared because, one, when you're in high school and you're not yet grown, but you're not a kid either, you find your dad's Playboys, or you find your, like in my case, I found my mother's like Holloway House collection that had like Gentleman Pimp and all of those really raunchy prostitute books in them, right? And then you read that, and then you go share that with your friend. It's like, you got to read this book, especially page 38, right? And so you get a love of the book because of something that was naughty that you weren't supposed to read, that wasn't age appropriate. Okay, that takes you into Jackie Collins, Sidney Sheldon, and other things that the book cover was curious, and then you picked it up and read the spine and said, okay, I'm down for this. Let me give it a shot. We've stopped traditional advertising and marketing for books. We've decided it costs too much money, and because of social media, Penguin Random and Schuster made it an industry standard to only go on Twitter to promote the book. So are we really promoting the book for us, or are we promoting the book for other writers? Because the readers are not on Twitter. The writers are on Twitter. And now you throw AI into that. Now they're going to have AI that they're going to pay Elon Musk however much money he wants, which is probably going to be $100,000, to come and do more marketing with AI on Twitter, on Threads, on Instagram, whichever platform they feel they can get the farthest reach. Because now when you get recruited, how many followers you got? That's the number one question a literary agent will ask you. How many followers do you have on social media? Which social media are you on? You're not on enough social media. Okay, I have like over 10,000 people following me on Twitter. I have no idea who the hell all these people are, and I'm so thankful they follow me because obviously they like what I write. But why is that a metric in whether or not I can write? I could have said a funny comment about Snoop Dogg and got 10,000 of them. You don't know. So
the
now,
metric isn't about you. The metric is about the people that are following you.
Well, they're a mixed lot. They're sports fans, they're music fans, they're crazy. Some of them are maggots, some of them are liberals. They're all over the place, right? I don't judge. They're entertaining. I hope I'm entertaining. But that is considered to be a metric, and there's no guarantee that those people are going to buy my book. They may not even see it in the feed because now social media has decided, oh, we're getting into AI too. You're going to pay us because we're going to use our AI to make sure you're paying us to give you reach. See how that hand is turning? And who loses? We lose. The independent authors lose. The established writers lose. Because now they want to know why their engagement is so low. And the industry has set this as a standard. And at no point have they taken responsibility. They have not come out and said, you know what? We fucked up. Sorry. That's all they got to do. We fucked up. We're sorry.
Well, I tell you what, after this 90-minute forum, I can't think of a better way to wrap this up than that statement from Tisa. And I'm sure we're going to have a ton to talk about nonstop about this issue. And hopefully we can do forums like this again. And so please, by all means, we're up at the 90-minute mark on this forum. Any last words? And get indie creators off their ass, that's for sure. So, any last words? Go ahead, Tisa.
Last words. Well, because there's a lack of ethics, as Andrew has said, I don't think anybody is going to come out formally and apologize. I think we just going to ride this until the wheels fall off and the car explodes. And when it explodes, what we're going to see is a cross, because there are a lot of 20th century children that are not old, but they're not young either. And they're going to be the last generation that want what they got in the last century. Now, the Gen Zers and the millennials, I mean, some of them were born in the 20th century, true, but they don't understand what we have, because they were generations that were raised not to have things, books, CDs, cassettes. They don't know what it's like to have their own collection of things that does not require a phone or a tablet. So when we die, it's over. The people here on this conversation, we are the last of the Mohicans. So we should look at that, because we are the people that are going to be old one day to tell the story of, back in the 20th century, we had paper that had words on it, and that was called a book. That's the future we're looking at right now, where another generation is being born today, and they're not going to know what a book is.
Amen. Amen.
That's it. AB?
Yeah. Final thoughts. We talked around AI not being able to emulate what we do. I'm just going to give you, and I'm not self-promoting here, but it's on topic. So the novelization that's just come out, I'll give you the opening line or the opening paragraph. A hell of a lot of pussy. That's the upside of being a private investigator. This job has got me more pussy than a Beijing barbecue, believe me. Maybe it's like Pussy Inquisitor instead. Now, AI will never write that.
Oh, hell no.
I think it just made me blush.
So, no, look, I mean, I think we have to be authentic, and we have to stick together as what effectively is a new underground culture. That's my view.
Hey, Mo?
Well, if there's one last word that I can say about this stuff, is that I hope we don't get so lazy, so complacent, and so dull that we just stop thinking. The battle against AI is our own creativity, and have your own standards. Don't let somebody give you a standard. Have your standards. You know what they are. You have to wake up in the morning and see yourself in the mirror every day. Know what your standards are and stand by them, because in the end of all things, they are going to have to stand. They will stand by you. If you don't stand by it, what's the words I'm looking for now? If you don't stand up for something, you'll fall for anything.
You got that right.
Amen. All right. And Vern, please wrap us up, buddy, with something, your sage words.
Oh, my sage words. Now you're putting pressure on me. I would just fall back on something I said earlier. And, they're particularly for those of us who are in America right now, people are looking for your vote. And before you endorse them and before you vote for them, extract a promise from them. And, don't be surprised if they don't follow through. But, extract it, document it, and follow it up. And that's the best thing you can do for your craft, I think, at this very moment in history.
That is it. And I tell you what, like I said, ladies and gentlemen in the audience, I think we're going to have a tremendous amount of discussion continuing on this, not only on social media, but just in real life as we move through this technological wonder together that's going to affect all our lives. So again, please give everyone on the panel a follow. Wonderful group: Tia Janae, Maurice King, A.B. Patterson, and of course Vern Smith. And the screen names on X are right below, scrolling across. Please give them a follow. Be on the lookout for more discussions on this important topic. And again, I'm George Kavanaugh. This has been a special edition of Cocktails at Cav. I certainly appreciate everybody listening in.